Hey, James.
Hey, Jay-Z, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm so excited about this episode. How are you doing?
Yes, indeed.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to Founder Design Thinking number 36. I'll do a quick intro and then I'll turn it over to James. I'm Jay-Z and I love helping startups with product management, AI, and being a creator. You can sign up for my emails at founderdesignThinking.com. I'm also beta testing a new product to help job seekers increase their interview rate. And this is my long-winded test website, but it's called Podcast My Next Hiring Manager.pineapplebuilder.com. So please take a look and let me know your beta feedback. But for now, let's turn our attention back to James by commenting your location in the chat, or you can just comment, literally quote, comment for reach and comment. So James, let me turn it over to you. Introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I am James Friscia, founder, co-founder, and CEO of CoNote.ai. CoNote. We are a research tool that helps supercharge qualitative research, really trying to get at the human understanding of why at scale. Jay-Z, should I give a little run through of the product so people can see what it is?
Please. I think I signed up for the beta a couple of months ago, so I'm super excited to see it live.
And a lot has changed since then too, but I will show you the latest iteration. We actually just had an update this week with some exciting features, but let me show the group. Great. Do we have that?
Let me get it onto this stage.
Perfect. So this is CoNote. I'll go ahead and log in. I do it with single sign-on Google, but you can set up username, password. And this is what you have. This first screen is just all your projects. So these are qualitative research projects. These could be that you've done a bunch of IDIs, in-depth interviews. It could be focus groups. It could frankly be any media you want to put in here. A lot of times we experiment with just podcasts or getting to quicker understanding with things which aren't our user research or our folks who are using us user research. But I'll actually just start by setting up a new project just to show you what that would look like, right? But all you have to do is just come in here and set something up. I actually love, let's do one, I love certain podcasts. This was one about, what should I do? I'm not even going to name it. I'm just going to name it test. And all you have to do is come down here. You can give it goals of what you're trying to find out. CoNote actually doesn't require you to do this, but you can, right? If you have a certain research question that you're trying to get at. You can add an industry. Again, this is very high level. It helps focus the tool a little bit, but you don't have to. So I'm actually not going to do that. All you have to do is give it files, give it something to point at. If you've hooked up Google Drive or Zoom, it can pull directly from Zoom Cloud or from Google Drive, or you can upload a file. I have hooked up my Google, so I'll just choose one. This is a podcast that I haven't listened to yet. It was how to get press for your startup or your company. It was something I was interested in, right? So I'm just going to add this. My internet is decently fast, even though we're on StreamYard. So you see it goes pretty quick. I think it was like an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, right? And that's all you have to do. And you have two choices. You can right away just transcribe it. A lot of people use this and then kind of use the tools I'll show you in a second if you're kind of adding files over time, conducting and kind of wanting to look at them. But when you're ready, you can also get a leg up. We call it the automated insights, right? This is your researchers, we hope your best friend, helping you summarize things, pull insights out. And our new feature of action items we're super stoked about to just give you a leg up as you're doing that analysis. And that's kind of it. And I'm just going to hit transcribe and synthesize, right, as we go. And we'll see how long it takes, depending on file size and, how complex it was. This might be 5 minutes. It might be 20. But I'm going to let that go while I'll show you one that we've already done. This is a project that was our own onboarding project that was a bunch of folks who we interviewed when we were iterating CoNote itself. We take our own medicine all the time and do a ton of user research. And this is what you get out once you've hit that button and what you see. So you get an overall project summary. in this example, we talked to 3 people about new feature set we were doing. And this kind of gives us, what they were talking about, and we get the high level themes. But that's, let's dig in further, right? So one of the first exciting things you get is action items, right? Like based on what people were talking about as a product builder or as someone trying to make a strategic decision, what does CoNote think to give you a leg up on what you might do after that? Right. So people were talking about their generally positive experiences using CoNote, for uploads, but they also mentioned some challenges, right, on certain things. So, when we looked at this, we used CoNote and said, okay, what were people actually talking about, right? Like we heard it, but we were all not in all interviews. So, what were people talking about? They were talking about, improving data security and making that very clear. They were talking about different ways to streamline their analysis, process, research analysis projects, and so forth, right? And so we get a quick leg up on figuring out, what might be the actions that we as CoNote have to take to improve this based on our own user interviews. And then you can just drill down. Makes it very easy to drill down into all these places, right? So underneath, it's like, all right, what exactly did they mean about data security here? I want to know, what we think. And this is all the places in all of the transcripts, all of the interviews that people mentioned security, right? And so I can scan these really quickly and see, where, what people were suggesting. More than that, I can click this button here and view the actual transcript itself and actually listen to this in context. So this is that quote that just came up about the action item. If I filtered this, by theme, I would also be able to get that, or sorry, filter this by action item, I would also be able to get that. And I don't think people will be able to hear it right now. I don't think you'll be able to hear this, Jay-Z, but I'm going to play this. And this is the actual video of the user interview that we conducted. So if I want to scrub it and go back a little bit, get the context for that quote, maybe I really love this quote and I want to tell my co-founder about it, or I'm compiling a report where I want to pull all these things together real quick, I can bookmark this, right? And make it an important thing that I want to highlight. And, I could talk about this forever and show you all the different ways to use, right? But all of these bookmarks that I've compiled of all the important things that I think are important about what got said, I can choose these and make what's called a story out of them. We're actually refining this feature and it's going to be reports in about a month or 2 and have some additional functionality. But if I were to just click, add this to a story, this is what I get, right? A really quick way, and I can customize this, add it, add cover slides and things like this, but a real quick way I can pull those highlights together from my research or from what I was doing and share it out to either your group or things like that. You can pull this into a final presentation for a client or stakeholder, and so forth. So yeah, that's what CoNote does, just giving what is hopefully the quickest path to your analysis. And then not just, pulling that analysis together, the insights for yourself is only half the battle. The other half is convincing others, convincing members of the team, right? And so we wanted to make that portion of it easy as well. I will pause there because that was a lot.
That was amazing. Well, Pete Friend has joined us. Pete and anyone else, do you have any questions? Because I have tons of questions. So please comment your questions. I think I'll start with the analysis. So is this a categorization model, or is it like just asking ChatGPT what are the main topics in this transcript?
That's a great question. We do use GPT as our LLM, right? We didn't feel like rebuilding an LLM from scratch, given that, there's lots of good things out there, but we've built a lot of algorithms on top of the language model and some other things to be able to get at, these deeper insights, more than you could by just querying GPT itself. So another thing we have, which I didn't even show, is thematic, right? Imagine what our inspiration was, card sorting for anyone out there who's a user researcher, right? Like a lot of highlighting of the text of transcripts and trying to bubble up keywords and then synthesizing those into the key themes that you'd have, right? So we do that as well, similar way to the action items I showed, right? Where you could say, all right, the themes that bubbled up, CoNote thinks, right? Our feedback collection, features, recommendations. This is that leveraging, a large language model to be able to pull things like this out. And then the other things that we've built on top of it to be able to do this across interviews at scale, being able to parse who is speaker, right? Their sentiment and things like this. So there's lots more, but the crux of it is that, right? Inspired by this card sorting exercise. And then the newest one, as I pointed out, is this action items. That goes a little bit further and tries to get at, what is not just the description of what got said, right? But what is a prescription of what you might want to do based on what it said. And, if you gave us industry or goals, it would also take things like that into account. And then we're adding more of these features over time, right? Our goal is to get as close to the why of what people are saying, as possible. Obviously this is language, but we also, if you've given us audio, we have tonal. And then if you've given us video, we have, video and all the things that go along with that.
So Pete's saying, had a great use case recently for something like this. Summarize hundreds of interviews, cross-tab, and summarize insights by geography and role.
Well, I would love for you to use it, Pete. Good to see you.
Would Pete be able to structure the data and input, filter by geography or filter by role?
So right now, we're adding more filters over time. I'll show you what that looks like, right? Like if you dump everything into one pot, right, you can filter by a variety of things, theme or action item across all files. Within a file, right, you can search for anything you want, filter by speaker and things like this, or various selections. Right now, the way we've had people do that, where there's like truly hundreds and hundreds, and you want to see the differences in between, is we've just created a separate project for each one of those. Not to reveal too much, I hope my co-founders don't get angry, but we are going to be adding what we would call a repository, right, where you can put everything into it at once and then be able to do some querying of that. But that will be a future update.
I see. So the user would structure projects themselves to be
exactly
different. Okay.
Exactly. Yep. But exactly for this use case, right? You can put any number of files you want in there. So if you had hundreds of interviews, right, you could just come in here and upload as many as you want, either right from your computer, or if you did them via Zoom. We'll be having some other kind of direct integrations earlier, but from any way that you've gotten your video or audio, you just dump it in here, let it upload, hit the button, and you get all the things that I showed you.
Nice.
Yeah. What I didn't show too, and sorry, this is, I find this one important, right, is this maybe is a transition to the topic overall, right? But what is the place of AI here? Obviously, we're trying to make researchers' lives as easy as possible. That's our goal. I'll be the first to say AI can't do everything that a human can do. I think we all know this, and we're seeing the limitations as we bump up against, people messing with GPT or whatever it is, right? But that's why we built our tool. This is a research tool. This is an insights tool. So the idea is this is a shortcut, right? This is a helper to try and get you to the insights. And maybe exactly as we laid out the themes or action items is exactly how you yourself would have done them. Or if you just sheerly don't have time, right, and want a quick answer, it can do that, right? And it can substitute. But where you truly can unlock the power, right, is, maybe you remember something because you joined one interview or a part of one. That used to happen to me all the time when I was managing projects, right? And it's like, all right, well, they mentioned something about like how they're using Google, right? And I forget who or where it did that, right? So I can go and search and be like, oh yeah, like maybe was this the quote they were talking about? Oh, look, I already highlighted it myself on this one, but maybe I want this whole thing. So yeah, I remember this, and this is actually important. I think what they said here is actually an important thing. CoNote did not find this, right? Like the AI that we built did not yet find this. So I can bookmark and select this myself. Same functionality, right? Where I get the timestamp, I can play it back, I can bookmark it, I can highlight it, I can share it with teams. So the idea is this is an augmentation to a process that you're going through. And, if our AI gets 95% of what you would have done anyway, fantastic. We love it. That was helpful. And you can spend your time, on further insights or further production. If it doesn't, hopefully this helps you go through it as well, right? It's a starting place from which you can do your work faster.
All right. Pete is asking about character limits.
So, Pete, for this one, you don't have to actually enter in anything. On that first page, right, where we put our goals, we did actually give it 2 goals for this particular one, and we did not select an industry. You do not have to put anything there, right? Like we are trying to get at, CoNote is trying to get at not only the description of what's going on, but the semantic understanding and even getting to sentiment, right, of how people were talking about it. We do that whether you prompt it with anything or not. So I guess short answer, no characters. And then if you meant on the files themselves, we limit the currently, I think it's something like, there is an upper limit to the files, but there's no real reason for that. It would just take much longer.
Yeah, Pete, keep the questions coming. And, for me as a editor, I am looking for that insight that I thought was really unique that the AI probably missed. And James, you showed the search and the highlighting too, which is awesome. So then after that, are you retraining the model, or is it just manually showing you the places where that keyword is?
So for security reasons right now, we've made the decision that your space, so for example, this space you're seeing is my tenant space. This is this James right here is what I named my organization, right? Within the James organization, all of these projects, it can only be shared. I can add, I can go into here and I can add other people who I want to share this with. Right. So if I sent this to you, Jay-Z, you'd have access to that, but everything lives in this tenant space. This is a long way of saying that we do not access this or pull anything out from it. So we are training the model, but right now we've made the decision to not do it on people's data for data protection reasons.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think for synthesis, it's always like we don't know why. And I think that's what you're alluding to, that on the roadmap, you're talking about finding the motivations or the pain points, the whys behind peeling the onion. And I guess I'm curious, what percentage of the synthesis gets used by your users today? Like adopt, 50%, or do you have any data on that?
We haven't, we collect data on that. I don't have a overall stat I can share with you because it's so subjective. What we aim for roughly, and we've heard this from a lot of users, is this gets you 80% of the way there, right? Like if this can catch 4 out of the 5 themes that you may have come up with yourself, we consider that a big win. And maybe that 5th one is just something we didn't understand yet, right? The machine just didn't quite understand. And then you can go and fill that in, right? If we've named something wrong, I just wanted to show the test that I did actually went through. So we could look at that. But yeah, let's look at that one real quick, right? On the insights and themes. Let's just see, right? So this is what they were talking about, these media things. Let's say that I think was the name, and again, I haven't listened to this yet, so I don't know. I think that's the name of maybe one of their companies, right? And I don't like this one. Once I actually go through and see what this came up with, yeah, life motto doesn't resonate with me. The machine kind of got that one wrong, right? So maybe this is something else, right? So once I've actually looked at it as a researcher, I go, oh, the machine missed this one, right? I actually want to call this, what is it here? Kind of lessons in PR. right? Something like that, and I can change this, right? So there's a level of customization. And I took a risk showing this live, right? Like that one, it seems to me, didn't hit. Again, I haven't listened to this one. This isn't our core use case of UX research, but just wanted to give an example of how that sort of thing worked.
That's really cool, because your competitors that I've been using while waiting for your awesome release, they really shy away from the synthesis, because in their experience, the discussion guide changes a lot, and the answers can vary without statistical significance. So I think it's really nice that you're talking about the post-production, like after the research, the synthesis, and the heavy deck writing that has to happen to align all the stakeholders on making inroads towards that direction. So that's 80%. That's huge.
That's huge. I mean, I on a couple of things that I've done, if you get even 20 or 30%, if that truly saves you time, right, where you trust that 20 or 30%, and that's on us to make you trust it, right? But even if it took you that far, right, like that is a help. And people have different philosophies on this. There was a user interview study recently that surveyed over 1,000 user researchers, people who work in user research, right? And they all had slightly different titles. Like some were like, I am a UX researcher. Others were, I'm a product manager who does UX research, things like this. And of all the job functions that they surveyed, the UX user researcher was the most skeptical, the most likely to be skeptical of AI outputs, the most likely to say they do not yet use it on every project. Whereas you had other groups, some of the product managers, some of the customer success people that are involved in some kind of tangential qualitative research, right? They're using it on 50, 75% of their projects. User researchers, I think, was a group, there was only like 7% or something that said they used it on every project, right? Or that trusted it implicitly. So it's interesting. It's a field that I think has a higher bar for trust, and has a higher bar for quality of outputs for, tools like ours.
So Pete's asking a question about the pre-production part, which I'll come back to you, Pete. Thanks for your patience. But James, to continue that conversation, what are the personas of user researchers that makes it so difficult to believe and trust the machine synthesis?
That's, great question. And I'd be curious if anyone out there has alternate thoughts. But in my mind, it's not just the persona. Personas are super helpful. I love that framework. Everyone should use it to have empathy for their users. We actually also love the jobs to be done framework, right? Which, if folks out there aren't familiar, the way I would sum it up is your product or your service, users are hiring you to do something, right? And it's like, what is the job to be done that you're performing for them? And so when thought of it that way, I might say there are some people who need to get an answer fast to something, right? And need to synthesize something fast, right? And so to them, it might not be there. It might not be a, hugely impactful strategic direction that they're trying to come up with, right? They're just trying to get someone some information quickly, right? And so we have people who use it like that, right? I have a testimonial marketer who uses this, and he primarily uses it to just quickly go through, listen to, and be like, I thought that was a good quote. When I listen to it in context, it is. You automatically give it to me, allow me to put them together. I hand it to my editor. It's done, right? And so the job to be done for him, right, is just quickly kind of pulling those things together, the clips that he wants to go off and present, right? Like, whereas I think if you have someone who is a PhD researcher, right, who has spent their career digging in and really thinking about making sure things are statistically, well, maybe not statistically significant when we're talking about qual, but making sure they're really important, really reflect a theme that was true and accurate, and it wasn't biased the way it was asked, or, all the nuances to get like the richness, like to true deeper insight. There is fair. Be more skeptical of AI, right? Check it over yourself more. That's what I would say. There's an interesting I was reading an interesting study recently where a group of PhDs took essentially the card sorting exercise, right? Keywords and themes. And they had a few researchers, I forget who ran it, but they had access to like 50 plus user interviews for like some big companies, like ones you've heard of. I think like Food Lion was one, Staples or something like that, right? So they had all these interviews, and they had, 3 researchers, I believe, and then they kind of ran GPT in like 3 different instances, like trying in different ways. And they said, let's compare, right? How well did GPT do? How similar were they, right, to the human researchers? How similar were human researchers to themselves, and so forth? And GPT, when prompted correctly in this, structure, was actually decent, right? It found decent overlap with what the researchers did. Where it came shy is the researchers had a lot more themes. And the reason was because they had a lot more one statement themes. A theme that bubbled up in the research that was from only one underlying kind of keyword or idea, whereas GPT really only did when there was multiple together bubbling up to a theme, right? And I guess I take that, and you'd have to dig in and say, but I look at that and I say, what is the magic of a great researcher? To me, the magic of a great researcher is finding the outlier, right? Is finding that one statement that maybe one person said that you cannot say was, a theme across everybody, but maybe based on the context or importance of what you were trying to discover, it's important enough that you would bubble that up, right? And so whereas I see AI tools like CoNote as a massive assist, right, is let me do some heavy lifting for you, right? Like, you then put the icing on the cake, right? Let me help you bake the cake, pull all the things together, make the base layers, right, to a decent degree following your recipe, right? And you do that final bit of decoration that makes the entire cake and the entire experience amazing.
Yeah, I was talking to someone about how GPT doesn't highlight problems in marketing. So like if I'm marketing a podcast product, it'll be like, this podcast will make you super famous. But it won't say like, you're not famous enough to differentiate in your market right now, or you're unheard of, like no one knows who you are. And so I think the fact that your algos on top of the existing chat GPT model, like your algos are trying to get to the why and the problem, is actually pretty unique because GPT doesn't know like what the problems are. So I think you're trying to add the problems. Is that right?
That's what we're aiming to do, right? That is our vision, to truly get at the why. I feel like in this modern era, we can observe what people do pretty well, right? We can set up an A/B test and observe that. Getting at the why they do what they do, we're flawed humans. We communicate differently, not just accents, but styles, hands, not, right? Things like this. We haven't yet added all of the features that are on our vision roadmap for what we're going to do to uncover. And there's certain things, right? If we're not in person with you, we'll never get to all of it. But the idea is to go ever deeper, right? So it's not just language, modeled in math, right? And we kind of come up with similarities. That is a piece of what it is. That is the crux of like LLM, I would say, or, natural language processing. But we're trying to go steps further, right? And not just describe, right? But go further.
Yeah, what you said about outliers is really interesting, because I've had conversations every day with people about small language models because they want it to be custom and personalized for that user. And I think you're saying for security reasons and data reasons, you're not retraining the model based on each account or each interview. And you're actually expecting the researcher to add that for that like last finishing touch of the outlier insight. Is that right?
It depends on their job to be done, I would say. I'm trying to get you as close, minimize the work that as much as I possibly can, right? And especially the crappy parts of your job, right? Like the parts of your job that aren't that fun, right? So even the transcription, right? I feel like not that many years ago, even still today, a few people, I talk to researchers who say, I transcribe everything by hand. I was talking to a head of a large research firm specialized in gaming, and he's the CEO of this company, and this is years ago now. But he was telling me how he was the only person who spoke Chinese on this one project, and so he had to do every single thing himself, the head of the company, right? So not that long ago, that was the way we did things, and now transcription can be done reasonably well. In an outsourced way to other humans, obviously, but even with AI tools, much like ours. And it gets pretty well, right? We're aiming for high 90s accuracy and achieve that. So, that's a piece where it's like, can you still do that part of your job if you want to? Absolutely, right? But why not let AI get you further, way further? And if there's something that's wrong, like, for example, CoNote, it's a made up word. So sometimes our own transcription, or certainly other ones we've used, doesn't get it exactly right? So that's fine. We can go correct that one thing. That doesn't mean we need to go back to manual transcription for everything. So I see some of these AI features that we're pushing and functions that we're pushing in a similar way, right? Until AI is there and you can feel reasonably certain that it's 99%, check us, right? Use us to be your wheelbarrow. Right? Load us up. Let us help you carry the load, right, to somewhere else. But you're still the one loading it up, right? And then unloading it, choosing where it gets unloaded.
Yeah, the title of this podcast is Move Over Doggo, is AI researchers' new man's best friend. So I love that, because as like an emotional service pet on an airplane, I'm not expecting them to get to the destination, but I just want their help to get me halfway. So tell me about that title and how your team came up with that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting metaphor, right? What should AI be? And if there are folks out there who have an opinion, I would love to hear it too. But I think this idea of, the helpful pet, or, helpful service animal is apt, right? Like, they're not going to do everything for you. I was thinking about this morning, JC. I'm like, what do we even call it? We have to train the model, right? It's just the model. We have to train it. We have to give it life. We have to direct it to something. We have to choose its inputs, right? We have to check its outputs, right? To make sure they're not biased or they fulfill the function, right? And tell it what to do. And so I see AI as that, right? Like, let's use it to make humans better at what they do, or faster at what they do, or remove the things that they don't like to do so they can do the things that they're competitively advantaged at doing, right? So the most elegant, case, and again, that I love when I hear this, and sometimes, truth be told, researchers say this and it's a knock, and sometimes it's a positive, right? But they're like, it didn't get it for me. I still had to go in and do this, that, whatever. Some say it with a negative voice, some a positive. But I take that as a positive, because that's exactly what we designed. Right? Like, you should have to go in and check us. Please go in and check us. Please use whatever time this saved you, whether that be 5 minutes or 5 weeks, right? And use that to do something that's more enriching to this project or something else, right? Like, that is why we're designing this.
Yeah, I love that, because I think a lot of people think, oh, well, I can just leave it on its own, right? And then, horror ensues. Like, if you ever have trained a model and then it comes back with something completely different, right? Like, that's a normal experience. You can't just set it and leave. So I agree with you. You still have to be responsible for the insight.
Yeah, in the same way that I attended a talk many years ago about it was like military dogs, and like that something crazy. They could take 500 commands and do all these special things, right? But at the end of the day, they're just a dog. And when the instructor and the person giving this talk, let him go from his work, right? It was still a dog that had to be fed, loved, right? Directed somewhere, put on a leash, brought around. And so I think the inspiration of the title was similar, is at least my belief and philosophy, at least for now, is that is what AI can do for research and for a lot of things, right? If you're willing to train and still be the guardian, right, of the AI, it can be useful and helpful to your life, to your work.
All right. Well, listeners, please comment your questions, but I'm going to ask this question that Pete had about the pre-production and does it integrate with Teams, Zoom, WebEx? Because right now you're doing uploads. So I think Pete is asking for some help saving that upfront time.
Sure. So Zoom right now integrates. So if you record the Zoom meetings directly from that comes in. Same thing with Google Meets, right? That was that Google Drive I showed. WebEx and Teams are on the roadmap to pull them in. Save that one extra little step.
Nice. Okay. Well, I think we're going to wrap up soon. So I think you had a question for the audience about how to make them more comfortable, like how to gain their trust. Do you want to just restate that?
Sure. I suppose I would say it in a way is for anyone who does use or contemplate using a tool, CoNote, or a tool like CoNote, what would give you more trust in either the use of it or the outputs of it? Like, what do you need to see as that user?
I love that it's such a philosophical, open-ended question, but also has a lot of executional details to it. So please get in touch with James via LinkedIn or CoNote.ai and tell him what you need.
As I said in the beginning, we take our own medicine. So this is my selfish a bit way of trying to collect some of that user research, right? Like we're designing this for actual people to actually use it. And so I would love to hear your opinion if you would be kind enough to share.
Awesome. Oh, and Pete saying you need to step up your glasses game. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. Jay-Z, I know you outdo me.
I was thinking about sending glasses to every guest, but then, you'd have to wear them. So, well, I guess on an ending note, any other ways that users can help? Can they test the beta and give you feedback as well? Is there another call to action for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, it's, as of now, free to go in and try for a trial. No credit card, anything. 30 seconds. You just need a username and password, and you can go in and try it out for yourself. So either CoNote, CoNote.ai, or if you want to go right to the app, it's just app.CoNote.ai. You can sign up right there. 30 seconds, no commitments at all. And would love to just, again, see how you use it, see what's useful, what's not. We're in that phase. We release, as of now, either once a month or sometimes once every 2 months. But we change all the time and upgrade. Like that action item feature I showed did not exist before Monday, this past Monday, right? And why did we make that? When we talked to a lot of people, that's what they were asking for. And so that's what we built.
Yeah, I mean, I have to go into separate video editing software, and it's such a pain to pull together a deck. So I think that's going to save so much time. So thank you for prioritizing that.
Yeah. And Jay-Z, as you said, you can reach me at either James at CoNote or CoNote.ai, or find me on LinkedIn, or, through the CoNote contact form. Any of those I check.
All right. Well, we're going to do our outro. Thanks so much, James, for being on episode 36 of FounderDesignThinking.com. Everyone, please sign up for the email list, and we'll see you for future episodes about AI, job search, game development, and more. So, James, I'm going to end the live stream, but we can continue to chat about which video clip you want to.
All right. Thanks so much, Jay-Z. And thank you to everyone.
Thanks, Pete, and everyone.